guys, Josiah here from Quadratic. Today we've got a couple of nondescript items on the shelf because we're actually going to be building our own micro quadcopter. This is based on the Arson 90X frame, so it's only going to be 90mm big, but this bad boy can take 4S. It's going to have better components than the Arson 90, and this is the best part, it's actually cheaper. So hopefully we're going to be building a really awesome quad for less than the price that you're going to have to pay if you want a bind and fly Arson 90. So let's take a look at all these components individually, then we'll build it up and we'll see how it flies and see if it is better than the Arson. Let's check it out. Okay, so to kick this all off, we have the Arson 90 frame, and this is just a tiny little 90mm frame, 3K carbon fibre, and it's 3mm thickness on there. This is about $10, I think, if I remember correctly, and so we get the base plate frame, the top plate as well, and all the little standoffs. And now this thing has been really good on the Arson bind and fly, and so I'm hoping it's going to be good as a standalone frame. It's a nice design, hopefully it's going to be quite solid and house all our components quite well. Moving on to the heart of this quad, we've got the Furby Fly Tower Plus Mini Flight Controller, and this is actually an F4, so it's updated, it's not an F3. And you know, Furby have actually been alright. I was a bit skeptical at first about the brand, but after producing a couple of nice things like the Futon, which was that 220 class racing quad, they've actually kind of proved themselves, so I'm expecting something quite good from this. They seem to be jumping on sort of the mini micro quad bandwagon, and they're producing a couple things for it like this, which is good because we can always do with some nice inexpensive components that do provide us a lot of power and usability. So you notice we've got a GST plug on here, and we've also got a USB plug, so we can plug that into Betaflight and change all our PIDs and stuff. And you'll notice this is a double stack. We've actually got the ESC on the bottom here and the flight controller at the top, and this comes as a whole unit, and it's about $60, I think, which isn't too bad for a flight controller and an ESC. The ESC is actually 20 amps, which is very good for something this small to fit on this little 90mm quad, and so to have 20 amps on that is good. And it's the same as the original Arson, but you know, hopefully we should maybe notice a little bit of difference now that it's branded Furby rather than Arson. You'll see on here we've also got F4 plus OSD on here, so this does actually have on-screen display, and that's integrated Betaflight, I think, so you can set that all up quite easily without a lot of hassle. This actually runs D-Shot 600 instead of one-shot as well, which is nice to see that even a brand like Furby are jumping on all of the brand new stuff that's only just coming out. So it's good to see that we've got that D-Shot compatibility in here. Of course, we can do sort of add a buzzer and LEDs onto this if we want to. It's got a 5-volt output here that we can connect our camera or anything else to. And so yeah, this is looking quite good. It's rated between 2 and 4S that this can handle. So hopefully if we whack a 4S battery on this, this should be able to handle that. So this is looking quite good. I'm pretty excited to test this out with the on-screen display and maybe a 4S on here as well. As for the motors, we've got these King Kong branded 7800 kV brushless motors. These are red and black, they're nice, and these are actually from, originally came out on the King Kong 90 GT, and that was an absolute bomb. I really loved that, and the motors were great, so obviously these are just the same motors. So hopefully this should provide a lot of thrust and a lot of power on our little 90mm build, and coupled with those 20 amp ESCs, that should be really good because these should be able to handle 4S as well. So I'm really looking forward to trying this setup out. Finally, the last part of our build, and this has been great because it's literally only 4 components so far, because we've got that integrated ESC and FC, and we've got the VTX integrated to the camera as well. Now, I know what you're thinking, this probably won't be that good, but this is actually adjustable output between 25 and 200 milliwatts, so this is really going to have the power on here. The Arson 90 originally only had 25 milliwatt output, so hopefully this is going to be a bit of a boost and we'll see a bit of performance improvement on our camera. This is 800 TVL, I think this is about $30 if I remember, all the links will be in the description, and it's a 150 degree field of view, which is really nice, nice and wide, so we've got a lot of field of view in there. It's also 40 channels, which is good. This isn't restricted to the 32 that cameras like this usually are, and yeah, like I said, it's 2500 or 200 milliwatt adjustable, so this is going to be able to give us a lot of power. It's got the built-in VTX, like I mentioned. You can actually get this with the whip antenna, which I would suggest. I wouldn't get this with the cloverleaf, just in case you do have crashes. I'd probably say get the whip antenna instead. So anyway, that's our camera and VTX included, our ESCs, our flight controller, our motors, and of course our Arson 90 frame. Finally, we need a 4 or 3S battery. I'll link a couple of these in the description, but for testing this out, I'm just going to use this HCL Tech 3S 550 milliamp hour, which I actually got with the XJB80, which was also an insane quad. I think this might be a little bit heavy for this, so maybe might test something out that's a little bit lighter. So don't hold on to your hats if I don't use this. Anyway, let's build it together. Let's put it together, even build it, and see what it flies like. So the first thing I've done is gone ahead and attach this flight controller onto the base plate. This bit here with the 3 indents is actually the front, so I've put the USB port and the JST plug at the back. There's not actually an arrow on this board saying which way it should face, so I guess we'll have to see what that looks like when we're in beta flying. Next thing to do is go ahead and attach the motors. I'm going to do this without them screwed on just because it's a little bit easier. I'll go ahead and show me soldering these. Be sure to do the wires in order, 1, 2, 3. There's no need to swap them around because we can change all that in beta flight. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't even say actually which motor should be assigned to these. So we're going to go ahead and just do them periodically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the ESCs as well, and then change what we need to change in beta flight. So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and put a little bit of solder on each of these pads here. Have your iron not too high, about 300 degrees C possibly, and clean it better than I have cleaned the tip of mine. This is quite dirty. You can choose to either solder it on the top or bottom. If you want to do it on the bottom, it just makes it look a little bit cleaner because you can't see the dirt solder at the top. But obviously you're going to have to take this off and probably solder it up and solder the motors all together before putting anything onto the X-frame if you're going to do that. But for ease, I'm just going to do it straight onto the top. Add the solder onto the pad, not onto the tip of the iron. You can if you want, but you shouldn't really. And then that'll just heat that up and then be able to transfer the solder onto that like that. So there's one side done. My soldering skills are appalling. My solder jobs are never very good. So don't worry if it's a little bit messy. All that matters is that you have a secure connection. We'll go ahead and do this side and then we'll add on the motors. So I'd probably suggest getting a helping hand so that stuff doesn't move about like you can see it is now. I've not actually got one. I did have one but it broke, so I'm just using this hammer just to keep the X-frame still while I solder the motors on. A helping hand just has those sort of crocodile clips on it just to help hold everything in place as the title suggests. And it's a lot easier, it keeps everything from moving about. Now one thing I did completely stupidly forget to mention is your receiver of choice, of course. I'm using FR Sky, I've got a Taranis, so I'm using the AC800, which is a tiny little micro receiver, has about a 300 meter range on here, so you just use whatever you've got for your radio. I'll let you guys sort that out. Basically you want to unscrew all of this top FC, flip it over, and underneath on the bottom, well, I guess you don't have to flip it over now that I've figured out which ones are which, but you'll see we've got the source, the signal if you will, is here in the red. That's at the very bottom. That is the second to bottom pin on here, and if we flick it over you'll see that it actually says RX1 on here, although it's very, very faint. You can't quite see that. I'll have a zoom in. There you go, so you see we've got RX1 there, and that is our signal wire from this, that camera's in the way, that is our signal wire. I've got the colours mixed up, but don't worry about that. Next we've got, this is almost in the middle, it's the third from the bottom, this is the 5 volt power supply, that's going into positive on here, which is the black wire, and then finally at the bottom, this is the second from the bottom, we've got the ground, which is going to negative on here. So if you've got it from the top view, and you don't want to unplug this, you've got the second from the top, if you will, from the left hand side. You have the ground, then you've got the positive in the black, and finally you've got the signal in the red, which is the second from the bottom. So looking at that, you'll be able to see the configuration of this. So anyway, let's just quickly put it all back together, and yeah, that'll be finished. Sweet. Okay, so here's the quad nearly finished. I've gone ahead and got the receiver on here. I've took that out the back. I'm going to go ahead and mount that onto the top plate in a sec. You'll notice I've also attached the camera at the front. There's 2 little holes in here when you can put a very thin cable tie and go ahead and strap that camera down. So if we get some crashes, that's not going to move in there. That is nice and secure, if a little bit uneven at the moment, but I'll sort that out. So I've put the red standoffs on, which go really nicely with the red motors. These just come with the 90mm frame, and then I'm going to go ahead, we've got a little cutout here that we can stick the antenna into. I'm going to go ahead and attach this on, secure the receiver onto here as well, and then that will be everything. That will be our quad fully finished, apart from maybe a little strap in here to hold the battery on, unless we're going to mount that on the top. I've not decided yet. So let's do the finishing touches and put it together. Okay, and there we have our 100% finished, well, 80% finished quad. We've got to put a little thin battery strap. I've got something suitable for that to go through there. We've also got to put the props on and obviously set this all up in Betaflight. But for now, it's working quite well. If we go ahead and plug it in, you'll see we've got the ESC sounds. We've also got the light on the receiver on the bottom there. We've also got the light on the FC, which you would hope, and you can see just about, if we go to this side possibly, the light is on the camera there. So everything's wired up perfectly, everything is working, we've got all our connections right. We're going to go ahead, and next video we're going to set this up in Betaflight and take it out for a test run. I'm really looking forward to this. This is an awesome quad, 200 milliwatt antenna VTX on this. King Kong branded motors off the 90 GT, which was a beast, and then of course we've got our 20 amp ESCs in there and our F4 flight controller with on-screen display. I really think this is going to be an awesome quad when I get it in the air in next video. If you want to follow along, this build video, links are in the description. I really hope some of you do this, because I really think this is a pretty neat quad and sort of an amalgamation of the best parts from the different mini quads that we've had over the past couple of months. Anyway, thanks for checking this out, guys. Be sure to stay tuned for the next video, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.